Kevin, and howdy doody. We have Miisa Mink, founder and chief doer at Driven Women. And Miisa, thank you so much for being on our show. You're our first international guest. She's coming at us straight from London. And my first question to you, Miisa, is what do you love most about us Americans?
Oh.
You ready?
Yep.
Tyler, you ready?
Let's go.
All right. Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking a timeout with today?
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, and howdy doody. We have Miisa Mink, founder and chief doer at Driven Women. And Miisa, thank you so much for being on our show. You're our first international guest. She's coming at us straight from London. And my first question to you, Miisa, is what do you love most about us Americans?
Oh, what a wonderful question. Fantastic. Well, you guys are so much fun. I used to spend a lot of time in Miami. Actually, we had a place there for 10 years. So I still miss those days. I used to spend there a lot of time. And it's just so kind of relaxed, cool atmosphere. And everybody's so super friendly. So I do love the mindset of Americans.
Awesome. And we're talking about that mindset. Sometimes our music and our movies and things get over to your neck of the woods there in the UK. What is your favorite type of music? And what is your maybe a favorite song that you like to sing?
Well, thankfully, I don't sing, not even in the shower. I mean, you would not like that. Oh. But I have to say, I like all kinds of music which has power. So it ranges from heavy metal. I listen to a lot of rock and roll, opera. I'm originally from Finland, so I listen to Finnish tango, which is super weird. Honestly, and I love great pop music. So anything that has a real power and energy to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I definitely feel that. And music has a way to kind of bring people together. And that's why I always loved Bob Marley myself, because he just talks about how music kind of breaks everything down and gives us some similarities that we can all get behind and dance to.
And going off the energy, Miisa, where do you get your energy from? How do you start your mornings out?
Well, I have a little routine. So I like to eat healthy. My breakfast is baked beans with Worcester sauce.
Wow.
very English.
In the morning. That's how you start your morning. Yeah. Exactly. I'm not sure how my day would finish if I started with that. Worcester
sauce, kale, and some fried mushrooms. Ooh. Yeah, I know. And then peanut butter on gluten-free toast.
Ooh, I'm a sucker for peanut butter too.
I know my husband thinks I'm a bit weird, but this is how. But before that, I do a little bit of yoga and journaling, and then after breakfast, I take my dog for a long walk in the forest.
And I know you have a set of twins, and you mentioned your husband there, and I want to get into that dynamic, right? So you spent some time in the United States, and it's not uncommon that males are traditionally the leaders in the household, right? I'm not sure that's the part of the United States that you really liked about our culture, but that's changing now. And I know this is something that you're very passionate about, but before we get into that, what is the one thing that you think your husband loves most about you?
Right. My energy.
Perfect. I got that. You can totally feel that. So now we get into the fun stuff, and leading the change. And I think I found you as a founder of 6 companies, I think is what I had you at. So you're constantly you're applying this energy, and it looked like each time you were kind of chasing your passion. But now you've ended up at Driven Woman. What is Driven Woman, and why did you start it?
Driven Woman is an empowering platform and community for women who want to achieve their goals and their dreams. So really who want to go after something maybe a bit more meaningful than just the paycheck. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to start a company. It can be anything. It can be writing a book. It can be something they're really passionate about at work, or getting to the next level, or whatever it is that kind of lights them up. Really kind of women who want to connect to their drive and find that kind of flow of energy and life within them. So it's like a framework that helps you to be on that journey, because we all know that it's we can have all ideas and goals, and then everyday life happens, and there's so many demands put on on us, on us as humans, but especially as women, that we get bombarded with requests at home, in the office, and it's very easy to lose yourself. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's very difficult to stay on the journey to create something bigger, something more meaningful. And that's what Driven Woman is all about, helping you to stay on that journey and to really figure out what it is that you're looking for. What is that kind of bigger life that you want to create for yourself? So that's what Driven Woman is all about.
That's so important. And I know you talk about kind of taking the first steps, right? We talk about change. We talk about stepping outside our comfort zone, but taking some of those first steps, and you mentioned it. I mean, women, especially here in the United States, traditionally they get home, they're on baby duty at that point, and then they're making dinner, and then their husband gets home from dinner or work. But taking those first steps, how do you, I guess, instruct, or where do you think that how can women kind of take some time for themselves? Like, I assume that that's probably one of the first steps, but what are the initial steps that women can start to take to connect to that drive and that purpose, and really where they're trying to connect to their energy?
I think very often we make things way too complex. And sometimes I almost encourage people not to think about those goals and dreams that much, because it can feel like, oh my God, it's so out of reach. I want to start this business or write this book or whatever. And it feels like, as you said, there's like, I have a baby to feed, and I have, laundry to do and all of that. How can I ever? And then kind of the inner chat starts and it all fizzles out. It's like you block it out because it's so far away. What's the point? I'll never get there. It's a huge journey. How can I? And then you just kind of talk yourself out of it before you have even taken that first step. So I think really the key is to be really kind to yourself. And each day, just create a little bit more space. It could be 15 minutes. It could be half an hour. It could be just reading a little bit of that book that helps you to get an idea, or understand yourself better. Maybe just 15 minutes before going to bed, just give yourself that little space to grow, to become more aware. It's really about daily small steps rather than some massive one day, I'm going to do it all and take this huge leap, and then I will have the resources and the time, and then it's all going to happen, because then it never happens. So it's really about creating a little bit of space every day, as much as you can. If it's 15 minutes, is it 2 hours? Whatever it is that you can do right now.
Mm-hmm. Something my wife said to me the other day, because we just had a child ourselves, and I'm definitely trying to pull my weight as a father. The full 50-50 thing is something. Now, she'll probably debate you. So I'm here saying 50-50. She's probably saying, it's more like 75-25. But I'm trying, Miisa, I promise. But we talk about kind of these expectations that women are under. And sometimes chasing that career or chasing that dream, you guys are constantly having to put that aside for years. And my wife said something that moved me. And she said that she doesn't want to only define herself as a mother. Can you talk about how kind of fighting those expectations on a daily basis, on how they can set their mind so they can really unlock what you're doing, and how they can really help find themselves as who they are without a child, without a husband, who they really are as just a person or an individual?
That is a very, very important and interesting question. And thank you, by the way, for creating that space for your wife, because that's a big role that men can play, is to create a little bit more space. And of course, when children are small, it's more difficult. And I think everything comes down to accepting that it's a journey, and also taking responsibility. really committing to the journey. And I remember so I have twin boys, they're now 12. And even though I've always been like my own person and I was never going to be changed by motherhood and all of that was like, I will be the last person who is going to kind of fall into that pit and, you know, disappear with cupcakes and whatnot. There I was in that pit like everybody else. I was like, what happened? But of course, I started to crawl out little by little. But looking back, it's like it really kind of, the society really brainwashes you to believe that you have to go to every parent-teacher evening and you have to bake those cupcakes and you know, like da 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 da. The list is endless. So unless you want to become aware and change that mindset, there's nothing anybody else can do for you. Nobody else can kind of slap you out of that. So it has to come from you. It has to come from within. And then after that, I think it's very much about surrounding yourself with people who are on that journey. Because if you surround yourself with people who constantly talk you back into the pit, you know, it's really hard. So you have to find podcasts and you have to find, you know, role models and you have to find friends and cheerleaders, other women who want to define themselves also as mothers. It's not about denying that you're a mother. It's a very important ingredient of being a woman, but then it's not the only ingredient. Then not, you know, forgetting what you used to love before you had babies and who you are and being on that journey of becoming a whole woman. And motherhood is one part and being a wife is another, or partner or girlfriend or whatever the situation is. But it's just one piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle.
Golly, Miisa, I don't know if I can even put this into the right words right now, but to me, you're doing, how do I even say this? You're doing like the most important, most impactful, purposeful assignment there is to life, and the most scared I am of. I mean, if someone asks Tyler what's out there even more, I get a little scared, Miisa. I'm afraid to really tell you my dream. You know, and I couldn't imagine being a woman, much less and taking that path. And how did you come up with this idea to help women for the most important, purposeful, whatever this is called, in the world to me? Like, how did you come up with this?
Well, it was a little bit of an existential crisis. I was trying to figure out kind of who I am. It was in me climbing out of that pit. So before I had babies, I had a very successful design business, branding and design business. And then I left that. And after that, I got involved with all sorts of startups and angel investing and consulting and this and that. I was like doing lots of things. And I was really panicking because I was so scared that I'll, you know, stay in that pit. And I was actually quite stressed out. And maybe could have relaxed a little bit and enjoyed more of, I mean, it was good that I had twins. Because I
could put some brakes on everything real quick.
Yeah. I was so exhausted by the whole experience it took me 1.5 years physically to recover. So I had to slow down. I had to calm down, which was very difficult. And I wish I did it, you know, a little bit better and wasn't panicking so much. So I was exploring absolutely everything. And then kind of nothing that was going was really it. And then one day I just basically, I had developed this tool because my background is branding and brand strategy and all that. And at the time I was looking into starting a personal branding agency. So helping celebrities brand themselves and you know, do all that. So I had developed a couple of tools for that. And that idea wasn't going forward at all. And I thought, okay, universe is trying to tell me something here. And then I was like, okay, let's take my own medicine. So what would I do if I was the brand, if I was the celebrity? What would I create? So what would be my purpose and my mission? So I was always hiding behind somebody else's brand, but I was like, okay, what would I do? And I remember it was a very scary moment when I put all my, what I'm good at, my talents, my passions. I wrote everything down on this, doing this exercise, which is now one of the core exercises at Driven Woman. And also my values, and things about my personality. And I was like, oh my God, when this idea came, I still get goosebumps because it was scary. Because once you really hit home who you are and you start to do something based on that, that's much more scary than, working for somebody else or doing something for somebody else where you can always be like behind the scenes. But putting yourself, your neck on the line, oh my God, that was scary.
Yeah. Well, you one of the things that you talked about is finding who I was, and I think that's really important today, because I think with what we're seeing in corporate America or just business in general is a lot of help wanted signs. We're seeing almost this clear disconnect between what people are wanting out of work and what work wants out of their people. And seemingly the DE&I conversation has been thrusted kind of to the forefront of really building a sound, fundamental pillars, let's say, of building a culture. Can you talk about some of the work that you have seen and are doing today to really help leaders? And some of these are female leaders too, that are obviously reporting to maybe some male dominated boards, on how they can really drive that equity conversation, and really how they can start to take the steps necessary in their own lives to be the leaders of their own, let's say, purpose of unlocking equity for women.
I think there is a lot of goodwill, and most companies really genuinely want to do really well, and they want to improve, and they understand the reasons behind it. But the work has not been embedded in deeper values, and the values conversation hasn't been had in most companies. So it's still based on very masculine value proposition and masculine strategy in terms of how you get ahead. So they want women in these positions, but if the values are based on competitiveness, assertiveness, who's the loudest, then you expect women to turn those masculine traits on, and then they can achieve, then they can have that. Whereas the change I'm hoping to see in the world, and maybe what Dream of Woman is facilitating within an individual and with women collectively, is to finding that feminine voice and finding those feminine values and finding the success that kind of fits more closely with who we were before we had to adapt into kind of the masculine success scenario. So none is right or wrong. It's just lopsided at the moment. You need assertiveness and you need a little bit of competitiveness, but unless you sprinkle it with kindness and collaboration and co-creation and nurturing and, vulnerability,
empathy, yeah.
Then it's just gonna go all like this. It's gonna go the wrong way. So what I'm calling for in companies, whether the leaders are men or women, because women are sometimes the greatest barriers to applying the feminine values, because we were taught that this is the way to success, and then you get there and it's like, oh gosh, I don't want, then they are the gatekeepers sometimes. So I don't see it as much as men-woman issue. I see it much more values issue. What kind of values are driven by the company, who are being promoted, the loudest ones and the fastest ones, or the collaborators, the nurturers, and of course it's not black and white. Mm-hmm. So and in order to change this, it's very hard, because not only do you have to do the values exploration on an individual level, but also collectively. And then when you come to these kind of daily crush points where your values are being challenged, mm-hmm. because that's what this is all about, is are you going to stand in that circle of fire mm-hmm. when you are being challenged? Yeah. Do you have the presence and the courage to put your hand up and call it what it is? Or are you going to look away? Mm-hmm. And most people still, I see a lot of people looking away, looking the other way when something is happening, or pretending that they don't see something, that these values are being violated. So they talk one thing, but when there's time to action, then it doesn't happen.
I'm so happy you bring that up, because I think it takes like courage or leadership, right? And sometimes it's standing up to protect those values. And that's what I always say to all companies that I get to talk to, and HR leaders. I mean, they put it up on the mission, vision, and value statements of these organizations, but when you come in and they're not protecting those values, or they're watching, like you said, who gets promoted, that tells you what the values are right there. Who got promoted? Were they the loudest? Were they the ones cutting corners? Were they ones coming in late and going home early? That tells you what the motivators are. And then other people we're human, right? We're nature over nurture, or nurture over nature, whatever it will be. And I think you just raised a lot of points that sometimes it's really stepping out and being a leader and having that confidence that you are doing the right thing. And I know we talked about like unconscious bias, and you shared something recently that I found fascinating about the training. That was immediately what a lot of corporations started doing, is talking about unconscious bias. But the article read that only 10% of them actually had anything as far as a groundwork or framework to actually drive change, right? To start changing those preconceived notions that we have, and making us aware of them, but also strategies on how to change that. That's probably a lot of the work that you're doing too in Driven Woman, I would assume. What are how do you drive that change, whether it's in ourselves, whether it's as a collaborative environment like Driven Woman is as well? How do we make that change, and how do we continue to see progressive change moving forward?
So I'd like to quote Eleanor Roosevelt here. She said that nobody can make you feel inferior without your own consent. Hmm. And what we do, and what I believe is the fastest way to tackle unconscious bias, is to equip women with more confidence and boundaries. Because you can't make me feel uncomfortable, because I'm comfortable with myself. Mm-hmm. So as long as it's kind of turning the tables. It's more fashionable to kind of point fingers at men, and you doing this and da 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 da, and why don't you see this and that? Of course, that's also important work, but it's really hard. I mean, people have been raised. It's really, you need to reprogram those neural pathways, and that's a lot of effort and motivation. And I don't know if the motivation is always there on the individual level, but for women, the motivation should be there, because you can change it for yourself, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But it's not as popular, because that means that we have to take responsibility for something that we didn't create.
Correct.
And I think this is a big theme that I see across, not just across women's issues or equality, but I don't know if you noticed, I'm also I'm doing work on the environmental activism side, and I started an NGO to protect Europe's fourth biggest lake against mining, and I see exactly the same thing happening there. So it's easier to blame lawmakers and this and that, rather than each individual taking responsibility of the collective change.
Mm-hmm.
So we are coming out of a very linear structure where, there's a couple of leaders, there's a big boss who kind of decides on everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it trickles down. So we are kind of waiting for those instructions, and we're sitting there, nice girls. But that's all breaking down. So everything is becoming more, multicultural, everything. And it's going into much smaller units. And everybody will have to take responsibility of kind of their own being and their own boundaries and their own courage and their own journey and their own passion and purpose and, figuring out who they are and then showing up. And then there's no unconscious bias, because then it's like, okay, sorry, I'm not taking that BS.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows then men to change.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is an interesting thing that has happened, because women have been taking this role of, oh, I'm so helpless here, and you need to sort me out, I don't really know what I need to do, and you know better than me, right? It's a huge burden for men. You guys have to carry all those decisions and protect and all that. We don't need that protection. We can figure it out for ourselves. And then we take the load off your shoulders when we start standing on our own feet. So I think there is an energy change that happens when we do that. And then the unconscious bias is going to go away. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit unconventional way to look at it. And it's not very popular. But hey, this is how I see it.
You are awesome. So get rid of the self-pity, maybe, and create your own responsibility is what I'm hearing. And sorry, my phone keeps overheating. It's 73 degrees.
Oh wow!
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, hot 73. Well, Miisa, I wanted to ask you, who are a few of your mentors that you kind of followed your whole life to get to where you are?
So I'm a keen follower of people I just find. I'm inspired by authors and leaders, and of course, earlier in my career, I had some really influential bosses, but I would say later on, it's more like I'm inspired by people who are leading or talking with integrity, and who have a very clear mission or message, and who then stand behind it, who can stand in that and take the hits, or who are not afraid to keep just expressing what they are all about. So from authors, which are people who inspire me right now, maybe because I'm very much in this more maybe activist mode, right? So female authors like Elizabeth Gilbert or Glennon Doyle, who are very much about being unapologetic, like really letting your life force take you and express your journey without apologies. So they're really at the moment that come to mind. I love Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Mm-hmm. Who else should I pick? Deepak Chopra inspires me. So I think it's at the moment more thought leaders as opposed to people who built some massive multi-billion companies.
Yeah. It's where you find that wisdom. One of the things that you were talking about earlier is multi everything, right? We talk about multi generations, right? I see women. You talked about some of the women that you look up to, or authors or thought leaders. It can be challenging right now because of the amount of social influence I think that we see on a lot of the social media channels. It's not always it's these women, and I give them a lot of credit, but my God, they don't even look like the same person once they're done applying their makeup, right? And they're creating this almost like this false reality of perfect life. And now we're kind of seeing what happens in the younger generations. And the Wall Street Journal kind of just did a blazing report on Facebook that they know about these problems, and the algorithms, the way that they're created, is only exacerbating the problem. What would you tell the younger generation of women of who they're choosing as role models, what they're looking as important? What are you telling the younger generation now that you've kind of had this revolution of your own, Miisa? How are you instructing, I guess, the younger generation of females to really become these bright, vibrant women who are not afraid to lead others and really start kind of down this path that you're encouraging them to do?
I remember when I was young, I was super insecure, and all the looks and everything was super, super important for me. So I think it's part of growing up. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there is anything wrong with that. As mm-hmm. Some people are born more ready than others, and if we're not, it's our job to get a little bit readier. Mm-hmm. During this generation and pass on less crap to our children.
Yes.
So I think, I always look at it with great compassion, and personally, I just stay away from that sort of very egoistic presentation. So again, I come back to the fact that you have to choose. You have to choose your peers. You have to choose your cheerleaders, whether it's which social media accounts you follow. So if you surround yourself with perfection, you start to believe that that's reality. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of really compassionate about the whole human journey. So we are all where we are meant to be right now. So if you are in that, there's no blame, there's no shame. But what I would say is just everybody would become more curious and, challenge their own journey just a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Because if you challenge your journey, if you do something outside your comfort zone and you go after the things that you think you can't go, you will have great gifts such as failure, falling on your face, complete breakdown, everything you thought was true is not, losing all your money, all sorts of wonderful gifts will come your way. But little by little, that will break that ego, mask and shell, and then you start to come out as who you really are. But it's hard to do without those uncomfortable situations. Mm-hmm. So, but they are really gifts. Because every time that happens, every time, there's a breakdown, mm-hmm. something brighter will come out mm-hmm. after that. And I would just I just saw this today actually on social media. And I must share this with you. Hold on. So that I quote it correctly. I thought this was brilliant. So hold on. If you fall, I'll be there. Ground. So quote from the ground. If you fall, I'll be there.
Yes.
And I love
it. That is perfect.
Awesome.
You'll always hit the ground.
Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful knowing that the ground is always there to catch you?
It's comforting to know that you're not going to fall into the abyss or off the earth.
Exactly.
But I think you called them gifts, right? I think people view failure as failure, right? And how do you, I guess, when you failed or have failed in the past, how do you see the silver lining and how do you grow from failure? So
what I've learned, I used to, when I was going into failure, and I go regularly, it's a cycle. Mm-hmm. And it's also a cycle that we've forgotten because we've forgotten that life is a cycle. We have the seasons. Mm-hmm. And winter is dying. We are meant to be dying and failing regularly. There's meant to be this renewal process. Everything in nature does that. You know, the moon, it's dark, you can't see it. Just when it's the new moon, it's gone. You are supposed to be gone regularly. So when I go to these renewal phases, I used to try to jump out as quickly as possible and find the silver lining and scrape something together and look like, oh, I'm still here. And until I learned to, I kept repeating, you know, you can get out so much more out of these cycles if you allow yourself to be in that dark place, in that renewal place. And now when the kind of the darkness comes, when the failure comes, or the time to renew, I just sit there. I don't try to find a silver lining. I don't try to, you know, scrape something together. I'm just there, and I'm just like, okay. And it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be sometimes months. And I know that something will appear later on if I just let all the gifts of not knowing come. Because you can only learn when you're in that dark place. Once you're going fast, I go very fast. When I go fast. I learn nothing when I'm going fast. I only learn when I crash and land. So yeah, so that kind of works for me. I don't resist it anymore. And I guess
that's
for
awesome.
me, the journey is all about finding my really true potential, like the biggest possible potential, how I can with most ease have the greatest impact on the planet.
Love that.
Golly, you're on fire, Miisa. And I was going to ask you, so you keep talking about your environment that you put yourself in, surrounding your people, you know, around the positive people. Who do you surround yourself with today, and how is it different than who you used to surround yourself with?
So now it's really important for me that I surround myself with people who are also on this kind of, it's very raw, this journey I'm on, because most people don't want to be in these dark places, and they don't really, you know, they care more about the shiny Facebook account or Instagram account than actually what's happening. So I surround myself with other people who are, you know, there's a lot of coaches, there's authors, there's, you know, people who are creating something bigger than themselves, people who have an opinion, people who are ready to put their neck on the line, who absolutely show up with integrity. Yeah, so, and I have to say now with all these COVIDs and lockdowns and stuff, I really struggled that I can't be in the same space. It's great, you know, I have regular Zoom meetings with, we have a every second week schedule with some of my, you know, core female friend creators, so that we, you know, we stay in this flow and we learn from each other. But that's not enough, because something special happened when we are in the same space physically. So I'm starting to organize dog walks and things like that.
We're getting creative with the pandemic. And
yeah, so Zooms and Teams is not enough. You need to get into the same space and same energy somehow with people that are on the similar journey.
Where do you want to see, I guess, equity? Where do you want to see this conversation, the same conversation, if we were to sit down, you, Tyler, and myself, Miisa, again in 10 years? Where do you want, what kind of conversation do you want to have with us at that point in time about what's going on in the world for women, and where are women at that point?
I want to see women showing up in meetings and putting their hand up. I want them to share their genuine ideas and be really excited about them. And I want them to be not afraid that somebody's going to laugh at them, or somebody's not going to give them the budget, or somebody's not going to support them, or that somebody's going to, you know, talk over them, or, you know, I want to see none of that. I want to see women really celebrating who they are and what they have to offer. That's what I want to say.
Dang. What book have you read that I missed out on, Miisa?
It's the one I haven't written yet.
Okay.
I'm in
Well,
a
if you could write a book, what would you title your book that you need to write for us?
Yeah, so I'm writing it. It got kind of disrupted by this whole COVID. So it's called The Feminine Way.
I find it always interesting, right? And I think that I will definitely get my sister, my wife, my mother that book when it does come out, and I'll probably read it myself, because I think a lot of this information is the same information that you could say about some passive people, men even. And sometimes are afraid to speak up in a meeting and share their opinion because they're afraid of the reaction in the room. And I think a lot of it is we're all finding ourselves, we're finding who we are during the pandemic most. And I think that's where people are kind of coming to this realization that we might want to look at work similarly how you guys do in the UK and the EU. And I think that we're starting to down this journey that you put it, and I love that. One of the points that I wanted to bring up is I always am interested to learn how people define success, right? What does Miisa Mink want to be remembered for when it's all said and done? Like, what is that fundamental thing that you want to be remembered for out of all your accolades, out of all the businesses that you started, out of all the lives that you've obviously touched at Driven Woman? What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to give people a space where they have courage to express who they are and say their opinion. So, yeah, and then Driven Woman probably evolves. My journey will evolve. I will write other books. My activism will evolve. But what I do is I create a space where people feel that they have something to give. And I hope I can do that and give that gift or space. I wouldn't say gift because I don't believe in gurus. I don't believe that somebody can, you need teachers and you need to pick ideas from and stuff. But everybody is their own guru. Everybody, everybody has the knowledge. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. They just don't want to know because knowing is bloody scary. So if I'm remembered for something, I hope it is that I created a space where people came and they were able to know what they know.
Powerful.
So I pointed them to that direction and they went and they knew, and then they put their hand up.
I would imagine the world would be a lot different of a place right now.
Well, we need that. It's urgent. It's bloody urgent. So it's really interesting to see on the environmental side because people are scared. People are scared to say, in a dinner conversation that, I don't think we should have mines on Lake Saimaa because they don't want to be labeled this or labeled that. But it's like, hey, we have no time. If we ruin that lake, I don't care how your dinner conversation looks like.
No.
You see what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's bloody climate crisis. We don't have time to think, oh, do I have courage to put my hand up in a meeting and have this awesome idea that I want to share, which will be really beneficial? We have no time. We need people to show up. We need people to really be genuinely there for their own knowing and stop the BS and stop looking away. So I hope I can be part of accelerating that process.
Golly. Well, I think you are, Miisa, in my opinion over here up in Rochester, New York. And I was going to ask you, so I've seen that you've probably heard thousands and thousands of intimate stories that women have shared with you. Can you share with us the most impactful story of all time in Miisa Mink's career within these thousands and thousands of stories, or is it going to be in your book?
Okay, I'm going to share one thing, which is which is a massively impactful and will be massively kind of this ripple effect sort of story. So this one lady, she came to Driven Woman, and this was when there was still some live, this was before all of this lockdown stuff, where people met in rooms. How weird is that? And she had basically been carrying a dream, an idea for 8 years in her heart. But of course, her idea for a business was so big that who was she to share it or to do anything with it? So her idea was to start a platform like LinkedIn that would connect charities, companies, and individuals. So charities looking for money or contributions, companies wanting to, support charities and do their part and, tick the box in the annual report, and also individuals who want to donate or time or money or clothes, whatnot. So basically this kind of platform. But what can you do? You're just a blonde, you have no tech background, nothing. So what she did, she kept herself very busy with other startups and things and ideas, because, it would never happen, right? Then she came to Driven Woman, and we have an exercise called The Dream I Don't Dare to Tell. Because that's your most powerful dream, right? We want to keep that as deeply hidden as possible. We never want to tell that thing to anybody. It's so shameful if we share it, because what if it doesn't happen? So that's the real gem, and people spend all their lives hiding it. All their energy is spent to keep it tucked under wraps. So, but not that Driven Woman. So she was like, okay, everybody else is sharing or whatever. Okay, I'll share. So she said like, okay, this is my idea. And then everybody was like, okay, what's the smallest step you can take without taking any risks right now? Okay, what can I do? Right. She was like, okay, well, I guess I could do like a hand video, like explain it on a video, my idea. Doesn't cost me anything. I guess I could send it to a couple of people. Right? So she did. She's, fast forward 18 months, she was fully funded. She's now raised, I don't know, $500,000. It's called whatimpact.com. I mean, she's on fire, and that is going to be a huge thing. It's going to be the LinkedIn for charitable activities. I tell you, it's going to be the one that she's going to be on the cover of the Inc. magazine. I tell you this. And it's because she shared her idea in the Driven Woman meeting and unleashed what she really wanted to do and stop bullshitting herself.
It's awesome.
I think we all could take a page out of that story and really relate.
Woo!
That's something that's powerful. You have no idea what hidden gems or great ideas are hiding out there just because we don't have the courage to share it. And exactly. I love the fact that the dream that I would never tell anyone, like, because I could think of probably several that I have that I don't even think I've ever told. But it's almost like the fear of failing. But then you said failure is the greatest opportunity, right? And don't be afraid of not knowing, and because there's always the ground is there to pick you up at the end of the day. Yes. Miisa, this has been awesome. I have loved every single second of this conversation with you. And I just want to thank you for being bold and being different and going against the grain. It's easy to swim with the minnows in that school of fish, but be that bold Nemo and swim the opposite direction and watch the ripples that you can create. I think that's so powerful. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Now, to kind of give a selfish plug, if any women in our audience are interested in kind of connecting with you and learning more about Driven Woman, what's the best way that they can learn more about this and connect with you?
So I'm super easy to find through all socials. So that's Miisa Mink on all platforms. And I would encourage people to join Driven Woman. So we have an awesome online community and a library of these Driven Woman exercises. And once a month, we do live calls where we, really show up, and we commit to 5 steps, small steps, and we constantly move forward. So it is this framework that keeps you going, and it's the community that you have to surround yourself with if you want to move forward. So that's drivenwoman.com, and it's 14 days free trial. So
well, everybody should
sign up and go and do some of these exercises. They're right there. You can just do them right now. And that's, by the way, something that separates the doers from the thinkers is if you are in that space and you're like, oh my God, oh, this is really awesome. Oh, I should. It's like, go and do it now. Because those who show up straight away and put things action straight away rather than think, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. That's where it all falls apart. So the sooner you do it, the better. So if you're committed to a journey, go and check it out and do a couple of these exercises completely free.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thank you again for all the wisdom that you shared with us, because there's probably some great ideas hiding out there and some future leaders and women leaders that can really change the world. And I know you're looking to change the world one conversation at a time. So thank you again, Miisa, so much, and pleasure to meet you. And everybody stop back next week for another guest on Time Out with Leaders.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Tyler. It's been such a pleasure.